Welcome to the Life Paradox, where reality is stranger than fiction. Daniel Mercer stared at the email on his screen, reading it for the fifth time in disbelief. After 8 years at Westbrook Financial, he'd finally been promoted to Senior Investment Director. The position he'd sacrificed countless weekends, family dinners, and school events for was finally his. The corner office, the substantial pay increase, the prestige. Everything he'd worked toward since graduating with his MBA 13 years ago. His fingers trembled slightly as he reached for his phone to call Elaine. His wife had endured so much during his climb up the corporate ladder. She'd raised their 2 children practically alone while managing her own part-time job as a graphic designer. She'd attended family functions solo, explained his absences to disappointed children, and fallen asleep in an empty bed more nights than he cared to admit. But now it would all be worth it. "Hey, you've reached Elaine. Leave a message." Her voicemail. Again. Daniel frowned, checking the time. 10:30 in the morning. She should be home, working on her freelance projects. He'd try again later. Right now, his colleagues were waiting to congratulate him. He could already see them gathering outside his office door, wearing expectant smiles. The rest of the day passed in a blur of handshakes, backslaps, and promises of celebratory drinks. By 5 o'clock, Daniel was mentally exhausted, but riding a wave of elation as he drove home. He'd stopped to buy Elaine's favorite champagne and a bouquet of stargazer lilies. Tonight would be perfect. They'd celebrate, and he'd promise her that things would be different now. More balance, more family time, more them. Every paradox begins with a question. If you love unraveling life's biggest mysteries, hit subscribe and join the Life Paradox, where every story bends reality. Daniel pulled into the driveway of their colonial-style home in the suburbs, noticing immediately that something was off. The living room lights were out, and Elaine's car was missing. Perhaps she'd taken the kids to their activities. But Tuesday wasn't an activity day. He entered the unusually quiet house, calling out as he set the champagne and flowers on the kitchen counter. No response. The house felt emptier than usual, and a strange feeling settled in the pit of his stomach. That's when he saw the envelope on the dining room table with his name written in Elaine's neat handwriting. Daniel approached it slowly, as if it might burst into flames at any moment. His promotion day excitement curdled into dread as he opened the envelope and began to read. "Daniel, I've tried to find the right time to tell you this for months, but there never seemed to be a good moment, mostly because we hardly see each other anymore. I've taken the kids to my sister's for a few days. I need space to think, and you need time to decide what you really want from life. I can't do this anymore. We can't do this anymore." The letter continued, but Daniel couldn't process the words. The paper trembled in his grasp as his world tilted on its axis. The timing couldn't be more cruelly ironic. The best day of his professional life colliding catastrophically with what might be the worst day of his personal one. His phone buzzed with a text, probably another congratulatory message from a colleague. But when he glanced down, he saw Elaine's name on the screen. "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations. We need to talk when I get back. There's something I haven't told you." 3 days passed in a fog of confusion and mounting anxiety. Daniel moved through the motions at work, accepting congratulations with a wooden smile while his mind remained fixated on Elaine's cryptic message. He'd called her repeatedly, but their conversations remained brief and distant. She needed time, she said. She would be home tomorrow evening, and they would talk then. The grand corner office that had been his dream for so long now felt like a hollow victory. Daniel found himself staring at the family photo on his desk. Elaine, himself, 7-year-old Emma, and 10-year-old Lucas, all smiling during their vacation to Maine 2 summers ago. When was the last time they'd taken a real family vacation? Last year's trip to visit his parents hardly counted. He'd been on his laptop half the time. "You wanted to see me?" His new assistant, Megan, stood in the doorway. Daniel snapped back to reality. Yes, could you reschedule tomorrow evening's client dinner? Something's come up with my family. Megan nodded, her expression softening with understanding. Of course. Everything okay? Just some things to sort out, he replied noncommittally. As she left, Daniel wondered if the entire office knew about his marital problems. Had he been the only one blind to the deterioration of his own marriage? That evening, he arrived home early for the first time in years. The house felt foreign, to him, as if he were an intruder in someone else's life. He wandered from room to room, seeing evidence of a family life that had continued without him. Emma's art projects pinned to the refrigerator, Lucas's baseball trophies, Elaine's workspace in the guest room where she'd built her freelance business, while he chased corporate success. In their bedroom, Daniel opened Elaine's closet on a whim. Her clothes were still there, which offered some relief. But as he was about to close the door, he noticed a folder tucked on the top shelf. Curiosity overrode propriety, and he pulled it down. Inside were brochures for art schools in Portland. 3 hours away from their current home, application forms, acceptance letters, an apartment listing, all dated months ago. Daniel sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the folder's contents scattered around him. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Elaine hadn't just stepped away for a few days to think. She'd been planning an entirely new life without him. The realization struck him like a physical blow. His phone rang, startling him. Elaine's name flashed on the screen. Daniel? Are you home? Her voice sounded tired but resolved. Yes, he managed to say. I found the Portland Art School materials. A long pause. I was going to tell you everything tomorrow. Why don't you tell me now? He asked, surprised by the calmness in his own voice, despite the hurricane of emotions within. Not like this. Not over the phone, she replied. I'm coming home tonight instead. We'll talk then. After they hung up, Daniel remained motionless on the bed, surrounded by the evidence of Elaine's secret plans. The irony wasn't lost on him. How many times had he kept her in the dark about his work decisions, assuming they weren't relevant to her? How many times had he made unilateral choices that affected their family, all in the name of providing a better life? Now the tables had turned, and he was the one blindsided by life-altering news. The bitter taste of his own medicine left him reeling as he waited for the sound of Elaine's car in the driveway and the conversation that would determine whether his marriage could be saved, or if it was already too late. Daniel heard Elaine's car pull into the driveway just after 9. He had spent the intervening hours pacing the house, rehearsing what he would say, swinging wildly between righteous anger and pleading desperation. In the end, he settled on simply waiting in the living room, the folder from her closet on the coffee table between them. The front door opened, closed. Elaine's familiar footsteps in the hallway, hesitant now. She appeared in the doorway, and Daniel's breath caught in his throat. She looked both exactly the same and somehow different. Her chestnut hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater. But her posture held a new resolve, and her eyes reflected a determination he hadn't seen in years. "The kids?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Still at Caroline's. I thought it would be better if we talked alone first." She noticed the folder on the table and sighed. "I see you've been snooping. Is that what we're focusing on? My snooping? Not the fact that you've been planning to move 3 hours away without telling me?" The words came out sharper than he intended. Elaine sat down across from him, her movements deliberate. "I wasn't going to leave without telling you, Daniel. I've been trying to find the right moment for months. Between my meetings and late nights. At the office?" His attempt at self-deprecation fell flat. "Partly," she admitted, "but also because I wasn't sure myself until recently. I needed to know if I could actually do this, if I had what it takes." Daniel leaned forward. "Do what exactly? Leave me? Take the kids away? Become an artist?" "All of it." Her voice remained Steady. The Portland Institute of Fine Arts offered me a place in their master's program. Full scholarship. They saw something in my work that I stopped seeing in myself years ago. And you couldn't pursue art here? In our home? With your family? A flash of frustration crossed her face. This isn't just about art, Daniel. It's about who I've become, or rather, who I've stopped being. Do you even know what I've been working on this past year? The exhibitions I've participated in, the recognition my designs have received, the silence that followed was answer enough. I love you, she continued more gently. I've always loved you, but somewhere along the way, we stopped growing together and started growing apart. You built your life at Westbrook and I disappeared. That's not fair, Daniel protested. Everything I've done, every sacrifice, every late night, was for us, for our family. Was it? Elaine's question hung in the air between them. Or was it for you? The accusation stung because it contained a kernel of truth he wasn't ready to acknowledge. His career advancement had become an end unto itself rather than a means to a better family life. So that's it? You've made your decision? Daniel fought to keep his voice steady. Your art career trumps our marriage? That's exactly what I'm talking about, Elaine said, her composure finally cracking. You see this as a choice between my ambitions and our marriage, just like you've always framed your career choices as necessary sacrifices for the family, but it's not that simple. She reached across the table, not quite touching him. I'm not leaving because I got accepted to art school. I'm leaving because when I received that acceptance letter 6 months ago, I realized I had no one to share it with. My husband was so absent from my life that my greatest achievement in years happened in silence. The truth of her words hit Daniel with the force of a physical blow. He remembered coming home late on so many nights, finding Elaine already asleep, her sketchbook beside her. How many moments had he missed? How many silent celebrations had she experienced alone? The promotion, he said slowly, realization dawning. You heard about my promotion and decided this was the right time to leave because you knew I'd be even more absent now. Elaine's eyes filled with tears. No, Daniel. I decided to leave months ago. The timing of your promotion just confirmed what I already knew, that your path and mine are heading in different directions. They moved to the kitchen, a neutral territory in their suddenly divided home. Daniel made coffee while Elaine sat at the island counter, her fingers tracing patterns on the marble surface they had chosen together when they renovated the house. 5 years ago, the silence between them was heavy with unspoken histories. Do you remember our first apartment? Elaine asked suddenly. That tiny one-bedroom walk-up with the leaky faucet and the neighbor who played saxophone at midnight? Daniel smiled despite himself. And the window that wouldn't close all the way in winter. We were so happy there, she said softly. You were just starting at Westbrook, and I was freelancing between waiting tables. We had nothing, but it never felt that way. We had plans, Daniel replied, setting a mug of coffee in front of her. Big plans. Yes, Elaine agreed. But somewhere along the way, your plans became the only plans that mattered. Daniel wanted to protest, but found he couldn't. The evidence was all around them, in this beautiful house that served more as a showcase than a home, in the missed recitals and games, in the separate bedrooms they had gradually migrated to over the past year. When did it change for you? He asked instead. When did you start thinking about leaving? Elaine took a deep breath. Remember Lucas's championship game last spring? The one you promised you wouldn't miss? Daniel winced. He had missed it for a last-minute client emergency that, in retrospect, someone else could have handled. Lucas pretended it didn't matter, Elaine continued. But that night I found him crying in his room. Not just about the game, but about everything. He said, Dad doesn't care about us as much as his job, does he? And I couldn't honestly tell him he was wrong. The revelation hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. You should have told me. I tried, Daniel, so many times. But you were always distracted, always halfway out the door or on your phone. And after a while, it seemed easier to just handle things myself. Daniel sat down heavily beside her. And you started building your escape plan. I started focusing on my art again, she corrected him. Not to escape, but to survive. To remember who I was beyond being your wife and the children's mother. And you found yourself in Portland? He couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. I found myself in my work, Elaine said. The Portland opportunity came later. My former professor from art school saw my portfolio in an online exhibition and reached out. She's the department chair now. Daniel struggled to reconcile this new information with his understanding of their life together. Had he really been so oblivious to Elaine's artistic resurgence? To her unhappiness? What about the kids? He asked. Have you thought about what this will do to them? Every second of every day, Elaine replied, her voice breaking. Which is why I've been trying to find a solution that doesn't tear their world apart. They need their father, Daniel, but they also need a mother who isn't slowly disappearing into someone she doesn't recognize. And there's no way to have both? No compromise? Elaine looked at him directly, her eyes reflecting both sadness and determination. That depends on you, on whether you're willing to make real changes, not just promises. On whether you can understand that my work matters too. I've always supported your freelancing, Daniel protested weakly. You've tolerated it, she corrected him. There's a difference. You've seen it as a hobby, something to keep me occupied, while you built a real career. The truth of her assessment stung, but Daniel couldn't deny it. He had never taken her graphic design work seriously, had never considered it a career on par with his own. So, what happens now? He asked, after a long pause. I don't know, Elaine admitted. But I do know that I can't go back to being invisible, and the children and I can't keep orbiting around your career as our son. As the night deepened around them, Daniel began to see their marriage from Elaine's perspective for the first time in years. What he had viewed as dedication to providing for his family, she had experienced as abandonment. What he had considered necessary sacrifices, she had endured as profound losses. The question now was whether they could find their way back to each other, or if the distance between them had grown too vast to bridge. Morning light filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting striped shadows across the table where Daniel and Elaine sat in exhausted silence. They had talked through the night, excavating years of accumulated resentments, misunderstandings, and parallel lives that had barely intersected. The coffee pot had been emptied and refilled multiple times, marking the passage of hours like a metronome. I should get the kids from Caroline's, Elaine said finally, her voice hoarse from talking and intermittent tears. Daniel nodded, feeling hollowed out. What will you tell them? The truth, she replied. An age-appropriate version, anyway. That Mom and Dad are trying to figure things out. He watched her gather her keys and phone, struck by how gracefully she carried her pain. Had she always been this strong? Or had her strength grown in proportion to his absence? Wait, he said suddenly, standing up. Before you go, I have a proposal. Elaine paused, wariness in her posture. Daniel, if this is about... Just hear me out, he interrupted, running a hand through his disheveled hair. What if I came with you to Portland? Her expression shifted from wariness to stunned disbelief. What? Westbrook has an office in Portland. It's smaller, and I'd probably take a step down from senior director, but it exists. I could request a transfer. You'd give up your promotion? The one you've been working toward for years? Her incredulity was palpable. Daniel moved closer to her, careful not to breach the invisible boundary between them. What I realized last night is that I've been climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. I've been so focused on reaching the next rung that I didn't notice my family slipping away. This isn't something you decide overnight, Elaine said cautiously. This is your career we're talking about. And this is our marriage, he countered. Our family. If I've learned anything from this conversation, it's that I've had my priorities backward for a long time. And you won't resent me? She asked. For taking you away from your dream job? For disrupting everything? Daniel considered this carefully. Resentment was a poisonous seed that could grow silently for years before revealing its toxic bloom. I might struggle sometimes, he admitted, but I would rather struggle with change than lose you and the kids entirely. Elaine set her keys down slowly, processing his words. And what about your part in all this? It's not just about location, Daniel. It's about presence, about partnership. I know, he said, feeling the weight of his past failures. I can't promise I'll transform overnight, but I can promise to try, really try, to be present, to see you, to support your dreams the way you've supported mine all these years. She studied his face, searching for sincerity. And if I say no? If I don't believe you can change? The question hung between them, laden with the potential for endings. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest, a physical manifestation of fear. Then I'll respect your decision, he said finally. I'll help make the transition as smooth as possible for the kids. I'll be the best long-distance father I can be. And I'll hope that someday you might give me another chance. Elaine's eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, Daniel told her. Go get the kids. Bring them home. Let's spend the day together, as a family, and then think about what comes next. She nodded slowly. One day at a time, he echoed. After she left, Daniel stood in the quiet house, feeling both terrified and strangely liberated by the proposal he had just made. The corner office, the prestigious title, the substantial salary increase, none of it meant anything if he had no one to share it with. The realization was both painfully obvious and profoundly transformative. He pulled out his phone and sent a message to his boss. Need to discuss some important personal matters affecting my new position. Available to meet Monday? Then he set the phone down and began tidying the kitchen, preparing for his children's return. Whatever happened next, Daniel knew one thing with absolute certainty. The life he had been so relentlessly pursuing was not the life he actually wanted. The question now was whether he had realized this truth in time to save what truly mattered. The weekend unfolded in a strange limbo of forced normalcy and underlying tension. Daniel and Elaine moved around each other with cautious politeness, trying to maintain a facade of stability for Emma and Lucas. They took the children to the park, ordered pizza, watched movies, activities that had once been rare treats due to Daniel's perpetual absence. On Sunday evening, after the children were asleep, they sat on the back porch, wrapped in separate blankets against the autumn chill. They've loved having you around this weekend, Elaine said, breaking the silence. Lucas keeps looking at you like he can't quite believe you're actually here. Daniel's chest tightened with regret. I didn't realize how much they've missed me. How much I've missed. Children are resilient, Elaine replied, but they notice everything. Have you thought about my proposal? He asked, unable to wait any longer. Elaine gazed out at their shadowy backyard. I've thought of little else. And? She turned to face him. I've decided to accept your offer, but with conditions. Hope flickered in Daniel's chest. Name them. First, we don't tell the kids this is permanent until we're sure it's working. We present it as a family adventure, a temporary relocation for both our careers. Daniel nodded. That makes sense. Second, we commit to counseling. Together and separately. There's too much broken between us to fix on our own. Agreed, he said immediately. Third, this has to be a true partnership moving forward. My career, my education, they matter just as much as yours. That means shared responsibilities. At home, with the children, with everything. Absolutely, Daniel affirmed. Elaine took a deep breath. And finally, if at any point I sense that you're slipping back into old patterns, prioritizing work above everything, becoming an absent husband and father again, I won't stay. I can't put the children through that cycle again. The ultimatum was stark, but fair. I understand, he said soberly, and I accept your conditions. A tentative smile touched Elaine's lips. Then I guess we're moving to Portland. The relief Daniel felt was immediate but tempered by the enormity of the changes ahead. Tomorrow he would speak with his boss, potentially derailing the career trajectory he had worked toward for years. The thought was both terrifying and strangely liberating. There's something else you should know, Elaine said, her expression serious again. Something I haven't told you. Daniel tensed, bracing for another revelation. Remember Marcus Bennett, my old classmate from art school? Daniel vaguely recalled a bearded man from photographs of Elaine's college days. The installation artist? Yes. He's the one who originally told me about the Portland program. He's been supportive of my work, encouraging me to apply for exhibitions, connecting me with galleries. An uncomfortable suspicion formed in Daniel's mind. How supportive? Elaine met his gaze directly. He asked me to leave you, said he'd been in love with me since college, that he could give me the artistic life I deserved. Daniel felt his chest constrict. And I considered it, she admitted quietly. Not because I loved him, I didn't and don't, but because he saw me. He valued my work in a way that you hadn't for years. He offered a life where I wouldn't have to choose between my identity as an artist and my identity as a woman worthy of being seen. The honesty was brutal, but necessary. Daniel absorbed it, forcing himself to hear the truth beneath her words. What changed your mind? He asked finally. I realized I didn't want a relationship built on the ruins of another. And despite everything, I still love you, Daniel. I've been angry with you, disappointed in you, but never stopped loving you. Her words offered both solace and challenge. The path forward would not be easy, but it existed, a narrow bridge across the chasm that had grown between them. I'll speak with Stephen tomorrow, Daniel said, referring to his boss. Set the transfer process in motion. And I'll start looking for apartments in Portland, Elaine added. Something with enough space for a proper studio. They sat in silence, for a while, contemplating the leap of faith they were about to take together. The future stretched before them, uncertain but holding possibility. Do you think we can actually do this? Elaine asked softly. Start over? Daniel reached across the space between them, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Not start over, he said. Start again. With everything we've learned, everything we know now about what matters and what doesn't. For the first time in months, perhaps years, they sat hand in hand, facing the same direction, contemplating a shared horizon rather than divergent paths. Stephen Rollins, CEO of Westbrook Financial, stared at Daniel across his polished mahogany desk with an expression of utter disbelief. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, he said, removing his reading glasses. I announce your promotion to Senior Investment Director on Friday, and by Monday morning you're asking for a transfer to our Portland satellite office? A demotion to Regional Manager with a 30% pay cut? Daniel nodded, maintaining eye contact despite his internal discomfort. That's correct. May I ask why? Stephen leaned forward, genuine confusion etched on his face. Family reasons, Daniel replied simply. My wife has received a significant opportunity there, and I've realized that my family needs to come first right now. Stephen's expression softened slightly. I've always appreciated your dedication to Westbrook, Daniel. Your willingness to put in the hours, take the difficult calls, travel when needed. But I've sometimes wondered about the cost. Sir? I've been married 43 years, the older man continued. Raised 4 children while building this company. It wasn't easy, and I made plenty of mistakes. Missed birthdays, anniversaries, even my youngest daughter's high school graduation, something I still regret 20 years later. Daniel hadn't expected this turn in the conversation. In 8 years, he'd never heard Stephen speak about his family life. What I'm saying, Stephen concluded, is that I understand. More than you might think. The Portland position is yours if you want it. Relief washed over Daniel. Thank you, sir. But, Stephen held up a cautionary finger, I want you to consider a third option. Keep the senior director title and compensation, but with modified responsibilities. 3 days a week in the office, 2 working remotely from Portland. We'll reassign some of your client load, but keep you on the strategic accounts. Technology makes this kind of arrangement possible now in ways it wasn't when I was building my career. Daniel stared at him, momentarily speechless. You'd be willing to create that kind of position? For one of my most valuable executives who's finally learning the lesson I learned too late. Yes, Stephen smiled wryly. Besides, it's cheaper than recruiting and training your replacement. The offer was unexpected and generous, a middle path that might satisfy both his professional obligations and his renewed commitment to his family. Daniel promised to discuss it with Elaine and let Stephen know by the end of the week. That evening, he presented the option to Elaine as they packed boxes in the living room, preparing for their move regardless of his final decision. It would mean more travel than if I took the Portland position, he explained, but substantially less than my current schedule. And the financial stability would help with the move, your tuition, everything. Elaine considered this as she wrapped a framed family photo in bubble wrap. What do you want to do? The question gave Daniel pause. For years, his decisions had been driven by external metrics, titles, salaries, prestige. What did he actually want? I want us to work, he said finally. I want to be present for you and the kids. I want to support your dreams the way you've supported mine. If you think this compromise would jeopardize that, I'll turn it down immediately. Elaine set down the wrapped frame. I think it could work if we're both committed to making it work. If we communicate honestly when it's not working. If we remember that our relationship is more important than any job or opportunity. They decided to accept Stephen's offer, with clear boundaries established from the beginning. Daniel would be fully present on his remote days, no disappearing into his home office for hours of calls. Weekends would be protected time for the family, and they would reevaluate after 6 months to ensure the arrangement served their renewed priorities. The subsequent weeks were a whirlwind of logistical challenges, finding an apartment in Portland, arranging for the children's school transfers, organizing the move. Through it all, Daniel and Elaine discovered a tentative new rhythm to their relationship, a fragile partnership that felt both familiar and entirely new. Their first session with a marriage counselor was difficult but clarifying. Years of unspoken resentments and misaligned expectations were gradually brought to light. Daniel confronted the uncomfortable truth that his workaholic tendencies stemmed partly from his own father's emotional absence. He had known how to provide financially, but struggled with emotional presence. Elaine acknowledged her role in enabling his workaholism by silently managing the home front rather than demanding partnership. Small changes began to accumulate. Daniel learned to truly listen when Elaine spoke about her art projects, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than perfunctory support. Elaine made space for Daniel to express his fears about stepping back from the career path he had pursued so single-mindedly. The night before their move, they stood in their mostly empty bedroom, surrounded by labeled boxes and the ghosts of their past selves. Are we crazy to try this? Elaine asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, feeling the contours of her body against his, familiar yet somehow new after their weeks of emotional reconnection. Probably, he admitted. But I think not. Trying would be crazier. Tomorrow they would load the moving truck and drive to Portland, toward a future neither of them had imagined just months before. Whether this new path would lead to healing or merely delay their eventual separation remained to be seen. But for the first time in years, they were facing the uncertainty together, eyes wide open, choosing each other deliberately rather than by default. 6 months later, Daniel stood on the balcony of their Portland apartment, watching the early morning fog roll off the Willamette River. Behind him, the sounds of his family's morning routine created a comforting symphony. Emma chattering about her science project, Lucas rummaging through the refrigerator, Elaine humming as she prepared coffee. The transition hadn't been seamless. There had been arguments about finances after the reduction in his income, moments of doubt when work pressures mounted, difficult conversations in their therapist's office. The children had struggled initially with changing schools and leaving friends behind, but there had also been unexpected joys. Attending Lucas's soccer games and actually seeing the pride in his son's eyes when he scored. Helping Emma build a volcano for her science fair and witnessing her growing confidence. And perhaps most significantly, watching Elaine flourish in her master's program, her creativity reignited in ways that transformed not just her work, but her entire being. "Dad, we're going to be late," Lucas called from inside. Daniel smiled and turned back into the apartment. Today was Elaine's first gallery showing, a small exhibition of her mixed media pieces exploring themes of identity and transformation. The entire family was attending the morning preview before he caught his afternoon flight to Boston for his monthly in-person meetings at the main office. "Coming," he called back, collecting his phone from the charger. The screen displayed 3 unread emails from Stephen and several text messages from his team about an emerging situation with a key client. 6 months ago, he would have immediately disappeared into these messages, allowing work to consume his attention even on a morning as important as this one. Today, he silenced the phone and tucked it into his pocket. The client matter would wait until after Elaine's exhibition. His team was competent. They could handle things for a few hours without him. In the kitchen, Elaine was pouring coffee into travel mugs, her face alight with nervous excitement. She had chosen a deep blue dress that complemented her eyes, her hair styled more carefully than usual. "Ready?" he asked, accepting the mug she offered. "Terrified," she admitted. "What if everyone hates it?" "Not possible," Daniel assured her. "But even if some critics don't get it, that doesn't diminish what you've accomplished. I'm proud of you no matter what." Her smile was worth every sacrifice, every adjustment, every difficult conversation of the past 6 months. "Thank you for being here," she said softly. "For really being here." The gallery was a converted warehouse space with exposed brick walls and polished concrete floors. Elaine's work occupied the main exhibition area, large mixed-media canvases that combined photography, paint, and collage elements to create haunting explorations of feminine identity. Daniel was struck anew by his wife's talent, seeing her, pieces displayed professionally for the first time. "Mrs. Mercer, the Portland Arts Review journalist, has arrived. She'd like to interview you," the gallery owner informed Elaine, gesturing toward a woman with a recorder and notebook. Elaine squeezed Daniel's hand nervously before walking over to the journalist. He watched her transform as she began discussing her work. Confident, articulate, passionate. This was a side of his wife he had rarely seen during their marriage, and witnessing it now filled him with a complex mixture of pride and regret for the years he had missed. "Dad, is that you?" Lucas asked, pointing to one of the canvases. Daniel moved closer, examining the piece titled Absence. It featured a fragmented family photograph with the father figure rendered as a blurry silhouette, present yet not fully. There. Around this central image were collaged elements, business cards, airport boarding passes, calendar pages marked with meetings and deadlines. The emotional impact of seeing himself through Elaine's eyes, as an absence rather than a presence, was profound. "Yes," he admitted quietly to Lucas. I think it is. But you're not like that anymore, Lucas said, with the simple certainty of youth. You're here now. Daniel placed a hand on his son's shoulder, moved by the forgiveness in his words. I'm trying to be. Across the gallery, Elaine was gesturing toward another piece, this one titled Emergence. Daniel hadn't seen this work before. She had completed it behind the closed door of her studio last week. Unlike the other pieces with their themes of fragmentation and absence, this canvas depicted transformation, a family reconstituting itself in new forms, broken pieces reassembling into something different but whole. The gallery gradually filled with art lovers, students, and local critics. Daniel observed with quiet pride as Elaine navigated the attention with grace, explaining her concepts, accepting both praise and critique with equanimity. He checked his watch. His flight was in 3 hours, and he should leave soon to make it through security. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. Stephen's name flashed on the screen. This call he would have to take. I need to step outside for a moment, he whispered to Emma, who nodded, absorbed in the free refreshments table. On the sidewalk outside the gallery, Daniel answered the call. Stephen, I'm at my wife's exhibition. Is this urgent? I'm afraid. It is, Stephen replied, his voice grave. The Westmont merger is collapsing. The board is calling an emergency meeting tonight in Boston. I need you there. 6 months ago, Daniel would have immediately shifted into crisis management mode, mentally already on the plane, leaving the gallery without a backward glance. Today, he hesitated. I'm already scheduled to fly out this afternoon, he said. But I can't leave until my wife's event is over. Daniel, this is critical. Millions in shareholder value. I understand, Daniel interrupted, surprising himself with his firmness. And I'll do everything I can from the moment I land in Boston. But I'm not leaving my family right now, not today. The silence on the eye. Other end stretched for several beats before Stephen spoke again. You really have changed, haven't you? I'm trying to, Daniel replied. Is that going to be a problem? Actually, Stephen said slowly, I think it's going to make you a better executive in the long run. Handle it your way. I'll see you tonight. Daniel ended the call and stood for a moment on the sidewalk, processing what had just happened. He had set a boundary, something he would never have done before, and it had been respected. The sky hadn't fallen. The company hadn't collapsed. And most importantly, he hadn't sacrificed a pivotal moment in his family's life for a work crisis. That, while significant, could wait a few hours. When he re-entered the gallery, Elaine was speaking with a small group of admirers. She caught his eye across the room and excused herself, making her way to his side. Everything okay? She asked, noting his expression. Work emergency, he admitted. I'll need to head to the airport right after this, but I'm staying until the end of your exhibition. Elaine studied his face. You're sure? I know how these crises go. I'm sure, he affirmed. This is your moment. I wouldn't miss it. She squeezed his hand, a world of understanding passing between them. We've come a long way, haven't we? Looking around at their children, Lucas now examining a sculpture with serious concentration, Emma chatting animatedly with an elderly couple about Elaine's art, Daniel felt a sense of peace that had eluded him throughout his career-focused years. We have, he agreed, and we still have a long way to go, but we're going there together. The exhibition continued for another hour, culminating in a brief speech from the gallery owner and a toast to Elaine's talent. As they prepared to leave, the Portland Arts Review journalist approached Daniel. Mr. Mercer? Your wife mentioned you recently relocated your family to Portland to support her art career. That's quite uncommon in today's world. What prompted such a significant career sacrifice? Daniel glanced at Elaine, who was helping Emma with her coat. It wasn't a sacrifice, he said finally. It was a recognition of what truly matters. Sometimes, the best news in your professional life can be the wake-up call that shows you what you're about to lose in your personal one. Later, as a taxi carried him toward the airport, Daniel reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The marriage wasn't perfect. They still had disagreements, still struggled with old patterns. His modified work arrangement required constant vigilance to maintain boundaries. Elaine was still finding her footing in her new academic and artistic pursuits. But they were facing these challenges together, with open eyes and honest communication. The promotion that had once seemed like the culmination of all his ambitions now appeared as merely a stepping stone on a much longer journey. One measured not in titles or salaries, but in moments of connection, in family dinners, in soccer, games and science projects, in the growing trust between him and Elaine. His phone buzzed with a text from her. "Good luck in Boston. We're proud of you. Come home soon." Daniel smiled as he typed his reply. "Always. Home is where I belong." As the taxi merged onto the highway toward the airport, Daniel realized that what had begun as the potential end of his marriage had transformed into a new beginning, not just for him and Elaine, but for his understanding of success itself. The corner office and prestigious title paled in comparison to the richness of a life fully lived, a family fully embraced, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared dreams. In the balance between work and life, he had finally found his center. And though maintaining that balance would require constant attention and adjustment, the rewards, evident in his children's smiles and his wife's renewed spirit, made every effort worthwhile. Some paradoxes, it seemed, resolved themselves not through choice, but through transformation. Not by choosing career over family or family over career, but by redefining success to encompass both, on terms that honored what mattered most.